Yo, what is up, guys? It's Pedro here. So the Washington Commanders have finally made a big change on the offensive line. Also, Jayden Daniels will not be starting against the Las Vegas Raiders. We're going to talk about that, when he's going to return, and much more. If you guys are new, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and that notification bell as well, so you never miss a video. Let's get right into it. So we'll talk about the Jayden news a little bit later in the video. I'm sure all of you guys have seen that. It's not breaking news. And yeah, you guys have already seen a lot of that. But let's talk about Andrew Wiley and, him likely getting the start versus the Las Vegas Raiders in place of Nick Allegretti. They're shaking things up on the offensive line. This is from Jordan Schultz. Very, reliable source. He's the only one saying it so far. You can see, his credentials there. He's the only one reporting it so far, but I'm sure it is true. And, he's had a pretty good track record. So Andrew Wiley at right guard. I really, really like this move. I don't know why this move wasn't made before the season started. I think this is what should have happened originally. Having Andrew Wiley, who has had a lot of experience starting at guard, also at tackle, he should have been the starting right guard. Obviously, I'm not at practice. You guys aren't at practice. I mean, I guess we were at a couple for training camp, but you know what I mean. They have way more knowledge and then experience in general, and then also with these players, so they know better than us. But still, it seemed like Andrew Wiley at right guard was the logical decision. And so far, the right side of the offensive line has not been good. Josh Connerly has been bad. We still have to give him time. He's also a rookie and going up against really good pass rushers thus far. So, he gets more of a pass than someone like Nick Allegretti, who is a vet and has also just been struggling. So they make a move. Andrew Wiley starting at right guard, and, he has 88 career starts. And Jordan Schultz says is expected to step in to help stabilize things. So this is the first time, at least that I can think of, Andrew Wiley is going to play guard for the Commanders. He came in from, Eric Bieniemy, and, Eric Bieniemy wanted him, and, they ended up signing him with Ron Rivera and Eric Bieniemy. He starts at right tackle, wasn't very good. Then last year, plays at right tackle again, has a, better season, or it might have been, Yeah, I guess, I think this is his third year at the Commanders, might be fourth. I don't know. So many different players moving, in and out of the franchise over the last few years. But, he's done a pretty good job recently, and obviously this year hasn't been playing. But I think that this is a very good move for the Commanders. Nick Allegretti can, be your backup left guard, right guard. And, Connerly, hopefully, he's able to play a little bit of a better game against the Raiders. It's going to be tough. You're going up against Max Crosby, probably a top 5 pass rusher. And it just really sucks for him because it's week 1. You're going up against Abdul Carter, and you're going up against Brian Burns. For most of the game, it was Brian Burns. Week 2, Micah Parsons. Week 3, Max Crosby. So week 4 versus the Falcons should be a little bit easier, but their pass rush has been good. It's just they got rookies, James Pierce and I think Deontay Walker, I forgot who it was, but he's been good too. So Connerly should, be a lot better against those guys. And if he isn't, that's when it starts to become really, really concerning. Or maybe not really, really concerning, but it starts to become much more concerning if he can't lock down that right side against, his fellow rookies. So, Andrew Wiley this week, I think that'll help out things, for the Commanders, make things a little bit easier for new quarterback new starting quarterback Marcus Mariota. This is his first start, going to be his first start since 2022. So it's been 3 years. He has played, but this is his first time starting in a long, long time, which, considering, he played 2 games for the Commanders last year. One was, a half, I believe it exactly a half, and, the actual first game was like 3.5 quarters that he played. So, the thing is, though, with those 2 games, he wasn't prepared to start. He wasn't prepared to come in and play. Like, you're prepared as much as you can be, but in terms of, all right, knowing what plays you're going to call this week, stuff like that, where you're going to run specifically, like, you weren't running with the ones in practice. And, that definitely makes a difference. So having him practice, this full week and get those reps is really good. Also, the fact that the Raiders, yeah, they have film on him, but it's been, 3 years since he started a game. And then also, they were preparing, I believe their coach said, Pete Carroll said they're preparing for Jayden Daniels and, a little bit of Mariota. So I think that is an advantage. Sometimes when you got to pay attention to two different things, you're less successful at both of those things because it's just too much to try to figure out. So I think the Commanders have an advantage there. But overall, it's unfortunate that Jayden isn't playing, but I think the Commanders still have a good shot to win this game. But real quick, a word from today's sponsor. And a huge shout out to Sleeper for sponsoring today's video. Make sure you guys go ahead and check them out. The Commanders obviously have a big game this week against the Las Vegas Raiders, 1 p.m. and Sleeper has updated picks and lines for this game, obviously because Jayden Daniels is not playing. So picks that I like for this game will make my full picks tomorrow. Zach Ertz, 33.5 yards. I could see that going over. And then also Terry McLaurin, I think will have a big game, over 45.5 receiving yards, and I believe he will have a touchdown as well. Stay tuned for my picks tomorrow. Make sure you guys go ahead and check out Sleeper. Use code Pedro. All right, so let's talk about Jayden Daniels being out for this game against the Las Vegas Raiders. It sucks. It really does. He's your franchise player, your best player. You want to see him play, but at the same time, it's a knee sprain, and, it depends, obviously, like if he can play through it and it's just, the risk is it's just a pain thing. That's one thing, but with knee stuff, usually, especially if there was a little bit of a sprain, it can lead to some other things, at least an increased chance of maybe some significant injuries happening. So ruling him out for this week, I believe, they did what they needed to do. And, it would have been cool to see him out there on Sunday, but that's not the case. They're going to, hold him out for a week. It'll be fine. And hopefully against the Atlanta Falcons, he will play. That'll be 17 days from the injury. I think that's more than enough time for him to recover, but who knows? Again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not the one who's out there and seeing him at practice. He was limited today in practice, so I believe that is good news. And, we'll see what he does next, week in terms of Wednesday, stuff like that. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I do believe, though, he will play next week. I was almost thinking that he would play initially when the news came out that he would play this week. And that there obviously was a chance, but seems like they're trying to be a little bit more cautious. I do believe, though, he will play next week. The Commanders-Raiders game's a sellout. I did see something where I think it was from Ben Stanek, like there's going to be a decent amount of Raiders fans, like 30+%. Dan Quinn on Jayden Daniels' status says we're not going to do this the fast way. We're going to do it the smart way, and basically saying we're going to do it the right way, and makes sense. And just you don't want to risk anything else coming of this. It's a short, it's a long season, sorry. And, this week against the, Raiders is obviously a very important game, but, they believe they can win it without Jayden Daniels, and they rather, maybe sacrifice this game and lose it than maybe sacrifice the rest of the season or, potential long-term ramifications of an injury. So, it does make sense, but, obviously I know everyone wants to see Jayden Daniels out there. So he was limited in practice, like I said. Captains, Laramie Tunsil, Deron Payne, and Percy Butler. So very random there. Don't know the reasoning behind that, but, it's probably just, week-to-week thing. But, some obviously, if it's like a revenge game for a player or something like that, they'll have him as a captain. So interesting, in my opinion, that Marcus Mariota is not a captain. I mean, first week starting in 3 years against his former team seems like a missed opportunity to make him a captain, but what do I know? But that's kind of it on the injury front. Obviously, this is a huge game for the Commanders. I mean, if you look at their schedule before the season, besides the Giants, this was like the easiest game on the schedule for the Commanders. A home game, against an opponent that's not super good. Not that they're terrible. This schedule is much harder than last year, but not a good opponent. A team that, was playing on the West Coast, has to travel all the way to the East Coast. We played on Thursday. They played on Monday. That's a huge difference. And, the Commanders have a lot of advantages. This is a game that, you got to win. You got to win. I don't care who's at quarterback. We know who's at quarterback. this is a game that, everyone's going to have to step up. Marcus Mariota, obviously, he's going to have to, play well or do enough. But it comes down to other guys like Terry McLaurin. Where have you been at? Let's step up. Let's make some big plays. Help out your backup quarterback. You've done it a lot in the past. Deebo Samuel, continue to do what you're doing. Zach Ertz, just be that safety blanket. This is a game where we can't afford simple mistakes. And Zach Ertz has been really good this year for the Commanders, but he occasionally does have some drops, and we can't have that in this game. We need our offensive weapons to help out our quarterback. Luke McCaffrey, if he plays, he needs to make some big plays. Jalen Lane, need to see something from him. He hasn't done a lot rookie, so it's expected, but we want to see some plays from him. And the defense has to come away with a takeaway. With 2 games, 0 turnovers, that can't be the case. So Trey Amos, Mikey Sanders, Lattimore, someone come up with an interception. Quan Martin, maybe it's him. He did have an interception called back, or forced fumble, something. They need to make some big plays against the Raiders. And Geno Smith is food. You look at him against the Chargers, that was 3 interceptions, and they were bad throws. He throws into double, triple coverage all the time. So the defenders just got to be ready to make a play. And you're gonna get they're gonna get their hands on the football 2 or 3 times in this game. It just comes down to, are they gonna make the play? Are they gonna make that interception? But that's it for today's video. Just want to talk about these new changes in terms of Andrew Wiley starting at right guard, and then Marcus Mariota starting at quarterback for the Washington Commanders. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. Peace.